day 3 of the 31 films of Halloween. For today's film, we are talking about the 1925 film, The Phantom of the Opera. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button to never miss a video. We have daily film content, including movie news, movie reviews, and so much more. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button to never miss a video. Today, we are talking about the 1925 film, The Phantom of the Opera. Now, this film holds a very special place in my heart because this is one of the first films I remember seeing in film school, and kind of really introduced me to the silent film era. This film always kind of was special to me. It was one of those films that I always kind of adored. So when I had the opportunity to see this on the big screen, I had to jump at it. The Alamo Drafthouse by my house, or not by my house, the Alamo Drafthouse in which I go to, had a screening of this for like a one-night only event. They had a live band playing to accompany the silent film with a score, which is something that was very common at pretty much every screening during the silent film era. And it's a highly misconception that silent films were completely silent, which they kind of technically were, but at all events they always had either actors standing behind the screen, acting out certain lines or saying certain lines to kind of give a sound projection. They had, in some instances. And then, of course, in some instances, like the Phantom of the Opera, they actually had live operas playing music at these screenings in the 1920s. And a lot of times, people would have, if nothing else, a commentator who would be, speaking over the film, telling, what's going on and trying to kind of filling in context to the film while you're watching it. So to be able to see this with a live band was cool. Now, I haven't seen this so many years, so to be able to rewatch it again was just phenomenal. This is one of those films, again, like I said, really kind of holds a special place in my heart, as being one of the first silent films that I ever saw and really kind of got me into that era and kind of jolted me further in my journey of becoming a cinephile. That one, and A Trip to the Moon and the original 1933 King Kong were probably my top 3 films that really kind of stuck with me. It left a ever-longing impact ever since I first saw them in film school. So that being said, being able to see this again on the big screen was phenomenal. And there's just so much that I feel like you get in this silent era that you kind of have to retrain your brain when watching. Like just watching it again, the performances were so over the top, but in the best way, because again they had to overperform to really sell you, because they couldn't sell you with dialogue, they couldn't sell you with tone. Everything was played out through visuals, which again, being able to see that being on the silver screen is kind of having that re-envisionment of seeing a silent film and how much vastly different it was. It kind of took me a minute to kind of get used to that, and I watch silent films still, not every day or on a regular basis, but just throughout watching the Criterion Collection, there's a lot of Charlie Chaplin films that are silent films, like The Gold Rush, which is one I watched more recently, and you kind of have these really good gems that you come across. And I feel like, I will say though, having the live band for this film was phenomenal, although it did kind of sound like the score was off. And I think that was part of it, what kind of pulled me out of this film at parts and times, is that the score just wasn't there. It didn't match the tone of the film, and it kind of felt a little sloppy throughout, which I hate to say that, because I just feel like having been able to see this film with a live band was just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that was phenomenal. The band itself is out of Texas, which is where one of the original Alamo Drafthouses, are at. And they got hired by Alamo to kind of make their own score for silent films, and they do events all throughout the country, and play out these silent films. I know they did not Nosferatu at one point, not necessarily. I don't know if it was the Alamo I go to, but I know they did a score for the original 1922 Nosferatu, which I don't recall being at that one, but I don't really know. But I would absolutely love to see that in theaters. Again, the score wasn't great, but it was still worth it, paying the $20 where it was for the ticket to have that experience and just be able to see this film, especially on the big screen, was phenomenal. And it just kind of really remind me, I'm just going to geek out for a minute on some things that was just so phenomenal. Again, this is one of the earlier color films, which you can kind of tell at points. And when I say one of the earlier color films, it's kind of a misconception, because this would count in 1925. They were doing color films as early as like 1902. I believe it was even in the late 1800s they did color film. But the way in which they used the color was dramatically different in 1925 than it was in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Now, I was watching a documentary on the resurrection of A Trip to the Moon and finding a color copy of celluloid and bringing that back, transfer to a digital transfer to kind of make it back in circulation. Come to find out that the reason, or how they kind of made that in color, is that they actually hand painted every single copy of celluloid in every frame, and that's why you kind of see it go outside the lines at some points in time, because of the hand painting, and they had to hand paint thousands or hundreds of copies of celluloid of the same film. Now, in Phantom of the Opera, there are moments where you could tell that it was hand painted on, because you can see it going outside of the lines and it kind of spreading across the celluloid. Most notable is when he's on top of the building and he has the red cape on. You see it flapping in the wind. You can see the sloppiness in the hand, or I don't use the word sloppiness, it makes it sound like negative. You can see the artistry and the hand painted red, which, again, I use the word artistry, which I know in this day and age is like kind of saying everything's artistic, therefore nothing is bad. That's not what I mean at all, because given the circumstances of the time and the technological disadvantages, being able to see or being able to bring that vision to life was of itself an accomplishment. And, bringing color to film was a huge step forward for cinema, and just having that, being able to do that. Now, there was a couple other various techniques used in that time to make film, or to see film in color, because there is one sequence where you see a full color sequence, but the coloring isn't the best, and they use different cards over top of the lens to black out different colors, and kind of let light shine through other colors. And they have some sequences where they have just color cards they put over top of the lens, which makes everything blue or everything red or everything green, and it gives a very color tint to the entire thing in its entirety. So the entire screen looks red. Like in one scene when they're in the lair, you have everything in red, and in one scene, I believe it's on the rooftop, everything's in blue, and like they have like a blue tone of tint across the entire frame, because it's how they use to film it. And it just gives it gives the film a different feel when you have the different colors. It adds a layer of texture, I guess you could say, to the film. But again, from a technical aspect, it was such an achievement and a inventive way to try to forward film. So again, I give it the break it deserves, because again, just given the times and the momentum that this film, would then shine on future films, you gotta give credit where credit is due. Now, with that being said, I really can't give this one a rating as far as full price, matinee, Ferris Bueller, because again, it's just one of those films that's gonna have an acquired taste. Although I will pick this for day 3 of the 31 films of Halloween, because I feel like it's one of those old monster movies that you just have to see. Not necessarily in a theater. You might not even get the chance to see it in a theater. But I definitely recommend watching this if you haven't seen it. It's a lot of fun. It's a very early horror film. And I remember from film class, my professor saying this film was so horrifying and so scary at the time that people actually wet themselves in the theaters. And it was, a big thing. It was like people were running out of the theater screaming. So without the Phantom of the Opera. There would be no Terrifier. There would be no Art the Clown making people throw up on their way out the door, leaving the theater because,
Lon Chaney
did it already. The Phantom caused audiences to flee in fear in 1925. So I think that is a huge accomplishment for a horror film, and the fact this is one of the earlier horror films that is most notable in film history is just deserves to be seen again, and that's why I'm picking it for film number film number 3 of the 31 films of Halloween. What is your third pick for the 31 films of Halloween? Comment below, let me know.